This green-haired girl with emerald eyes is the Jade Clan of Zhao Techui. And this girl with pink hair and eyes like the depth of the ocean is the assistant of the Jade Clan Lu Xiaonan, who is very impatient. Well, this guy with coffee-colored hair and fiery eyes is a private of the Zhonglan Jade Clan. Suddenly, a huge hole formed in the stone wall, in which a dark silhouette of a girl appeared. That silhouette belonged to a very important person. She is the empress of the Xianyao Jade Clan, and it can definitely be said that she was clearly in a bad mood, calling those three people as dogs. But then the guy turned to the empress and said that she was finally here and they could be together. He put his arm around Lu Xiaonan and told both of them to ask the main to try out the weapons. Here the boy heard some sounds, and the pink-haired woman kept rushing him somewhere. Zhang Lan was sleeping peacefully in the Jade Clan's private room, which suited his status, but suddenly a voice was heard outside the door, demanding him to open the door immediately. There were two young girls standing near the gate of the Jade Clan who clearly wanted to enter, but the entrance was closed. They were surprised, for they had always opened the gate before. Girls started talking about the clan and that all the female monks here are good at martial arts at a young age. The second girl asked a question about the men, namely, are there any stinkers here? Ta denied such a thing, for the Jade Clan hates men the most, and pointed out the interesting fact that there are no male dogs within a 100 kilometers radius. And then the gate finally opens and our guy shows up and asks what happened and what's wrong. Girls looked at him with horror and tried to understand how such a thing was even possible. Those ran away from the gate with all their legs, and the boy looked at them with bewilderment. His name is Zhang Liang, and yes, he is a man who in turn works as a gate guard for the Jade Clan at the foot of the mountain. It looks very strange that a temple that is made up entirely of women has a male gate guard. And it all started 3 days ago when he was taking a bath and suddenly felt himself falling somewhere down. He landed in a very interesting place, namely on a stone statue during the Jade Clan's ancestor worship ceremony. He got the idea that he was just going to get killed. But a woman ordered not to kill him, but rather send him to guard the gate at the foot of the mountain. That's how Zhang Lan got there and became the guardian of the very gate. At the time, he had no skills at all, so he made the decision to hide in secret for a while, trying to gain the experience and skills necessary to succeed. He felt that the Empress aroused a special attraction in him, but barriers prevented him from uttering a word to her. At the 22nd moment he felt a strong attraction to her, but kept silent, restraining his emotions. After these reflections, a fire of passion and determination flared up in his heart. At the 23rd moment he seems to be engulfed by a flame that feeds his inner strength and desire to give everything of himself. With shock the guy started to look around where he is, but he is not yet aware that he is in the consciousness of a deity. He panicked and asked loudly several times what this place was, floating in the air. In the second situation, he, gripped by anxiety, repeated the question several times, screaming in bewilderment and weightlessness. Suddenly a silhouette appeared, followed by a voice that addressed the guy as an overlord and that he had activated the god-level system, after which he was given the task of logging into system number 1. After that something else appeared, namely the task category, the time required, the task content, the reward and also the punishment. The task category said to specify the system-designated place to log in, the time said to do it before midnight, the task content said to get to the Empress, Jun Xianyao, bedchamber to complete the login, the reward was unknown and the punishment was death. The guy was horrified by what he heard and started arguing with that silhouette of a girl, saying that it's nonsense to commit suicide like that. But she sharply shut him up and interrupted his objections, arguing that he had no right to resist the task system. Words barely had time to be spoken before he collapsed down, not looking at anything around him. At this point she added that if he didn't complete the system's task, it would be the end of him. Suddenly he landed in a spacious room whose guardian did not need to make an effort to hear the rumble of the fall. Haunted by terror, he could not understand why he was being bullied so cruelly. Panic enveloped him, causing him to question the justice and meaning of what was happening. It was a beautiful place that could even charm anyone at first glance. This Jade Clan was located outside the main palace, and its appeal was simply mesmerizing. Zhang Lan is already at the ready and hiding behind one of the pillars, thinking that it is better to try and complete the task rather than exposing himself to a painful death. Surely the reward must be good and something that will save his life. He sprinted. With the speed of a cheetah, mentally praying that everything would go well and without unnecessary problems, hoping to avoid any unforeseen difficulties and troubles. After 10 minutes of fast running, he was already right outside the Empress's palace, almost approaching the goal of his journey. He was angry and frustrated because his pleas and requests were not answered when he so badly needed and hoped for support. Guy mentally banished the Empress to the bedchamber in spite of his fears and anxieties, for he feared she might be dangerous if she came out of her apartments. Toth tried to open the door quietly, but it suddenly opened with a kind of noise that made him uneasy and wary. Empress at this time was practicing immersion, sitting in lotus posture in the air, fully immersed in her meditative practices and striving to achieve harmony with herself and the world around her. Zhang thought badly, for she was still awake, leading him to doubt and worry about her condition and mood. And she felt it, knew that someone was wandering outside her bedchamber, and dared to go inside. If she couldn't stop at the right moment, she'd finish him off. Boy slowly tried to go inside the room, for he thought nothing would happen. But as soon as he took the first step into the building, there was a bright yellow beam from the palace, which was visible in the sky all around, so also with a tremendous force of sound. The same two girls from Lana's dream heard the sound and immediately turned around to see what was going on. Empress finally opened her eyes and came out of her trance when she saw someone unfamiliar in front of her with a beam radiating out of them. Guy's body became much stronger and it was visible. The same voice congratulated him because he had completed the entry system. His reward was a divine body with an impenetrable heart and was also given speed boots. Finally that bright light was gone and the satisfied Guy was left standing on the floor in one piece. Jun Xianyao stood up in defense of her palace, not accepting the presence of an insolent man within its hallowed walls, and asked with contempt who he dared to be here in her domain. Heart engine was activated, and the divine body, filled with incredible energy, was charged to 40% of its full power. Guy felt this immense, boundless power within him awaken and seek to burst forth, filling his essence and filling his every cell. Empress began to attack, but the fellow steadfastly stood his ground and took her kick with the foot of one right limb, neither wavering nor retreating before her attack. She found herself utterly confused, plagued by vague doubts, and unable to understand who he really was or what he wanted in her palace. Suddenly the voices of the faithful servants filled the air, and this unexpected sound caused the uninvited guest to be displeased. One of the servants, unwilling to tolerate the uninvited presence, ordered the stranger to stop, but the stranger dismissed the order with contempt, paying no attention to it. The girl, who was in a state of rage, was very annoyed because he had interrupted her meditation, and she responded by striking back with a strong blow, expressing her resentment and anger. Two girls who served as loyal courtiers to the Empress approached her and anxiously asked if she was all right and where this mysterious stranger. The Empress was flaming with rage, and ordered the gate of the Jade Clan to be closed immediately so that no one could leave its territory, especially this insolent man. She was so offended. The Empress sitting on her throne watched angrily as one of her aides interrogated Tetchui, accusing her of not protecting the clan well, to which she didn't even deny, only saying that she didn't suspect a traitor in the Jade Clan. But she flatly stated that this stranger was not a clan disciple, but some strange man whose scent was still in the air, permeating every corner of the palace walls. Tetchui and the rest of the servants were also shocked to hear of this mysterious man's presence in the palace, and their confusion was reflected on their faces and in their bewildered actions. Everyone who could, began to actively search for this guy, but there was no trace of him anywhere, as if he had disappeared, as if he had vanished through the ground, but they were not going to give up and continued their search. Zhao ran steadily down one of the corridors, moving quickly in his gifted speed boots, but the sound of his running did not go unnoticed by the guards who were on watch. He was so fast that the guards could not capture him in any way or even just approach him. Their attempts were in vain. The stranger found himself a secluded place where he could hide, and to his surprise he found that the place was populated by girls, and there were many of them around. The girls quickly noticed his presence and a chorus of outcries began about how this man had gotten in here with them, and they urged each other to keep him away and not let him touch them. The guy ran lightning fast out of the bathroom in which he had fled, followed by all sorts of heavy objects that someone had tried to throw at him in disapproval and rage. On the way to the gate of the Jade Clan, Techui pronounced that the only smelly man here could only be Zhang Lang, so she ordered him to be arrested, and if he resisted, he would be wiped into powder. The chief personality and her subordinates suddenly noticed unusual sounds coming from behind the huge bushes, as if someone was running, trying to escape from the observers. The stranger's body was at the limit of its energetic tension, charged at 130%, and seemed on the verge of exploding, ready to destroy everything around it. That guard, noticing his presence, with a furious expression on her face, instantly rushed in pursuit, waving her weapon and heading straight for him. Guy felt that he had been recognized and realized that he could no longer escape the trouble ahead of him. At this time, disciples from the Black Dagger clan entered the clan, paying their visit to deliver an important letter, and they are stunned by what is happening, finding themselves witnessing events full of terror and tension. All three Black Dagger disciples concentrated their magic power and simultaneously pointed their daggers towards the guy, ready to use their power against him. Guy realized that it was indeed time to leave the place and asked in horror to be left alone, though the statement might have seemed odd. The next day, by noon, the strange guy was grabbed, tied up, and brought to the main hall of the Jade Clan where all the important events were taking place. The guy felt the weight of the shackles on his wrists and nervously looked around, trying to figure out what was going on and why he was brought here. Techui approached him, hovering over him, and asked him if he understood the crime he had committed the previous night. Her voice sounded stern and penetrating, and her gaze was full of severity and authority. She expected an answer that would explain all doubts and pave the way for further action. But Zhang Lan insisted and claimed that he did not remember anything at all and that he did not even know how he had ended up in the hall where many girls were present. This only annoyed the girl, who accused him of pretending and considered him a fool. She looked at him with contempt, sure that he was hiding his true intentions and deliberately misleading them all. She kept insisting that he was only pretending to be a beginner, while his skills were actually excellent and had reached the 6th level of practical perfection. Her voice sounded convincing, and she pointed out the guy's smallest details and gestures that she thought indicated his hidden abilities. The girl with pink hair interrupted Techui and stated that the 6th level was only possible at the peak of practical perfection. Her voice was heartfelt and she spoke her words with confidence as if she had a full understanding of the clan's requirements and standards. Her words caused disbelief and doubt in those gathered, and all eyes turned to the guy, waiting for his answer and clarification. However, Techui replied that she had witnesses whom she claimed Zhang Lan had beaten up while at the 6th skill level. Her voice sounded confident and her eyes indicated that she was willing to back up her words with evidence. She gave the names of the witnesses, claiming that they had seen the attack and had been attacked by Zhang Lan. This statement caused shock and disbelief among those present, and all eyes turned to Zhang Lan, waiting for his reaction and explanation. The 3 members of the Dark Dagger clan were greatly offended and did not want to admit defeat. So they decided to defend the dignity of their clan by claiming that they did not remember anything. They looked determined and ready to defend their reputation to the end. Their words were imbued with pride and denial, and they rejected all accusations while standing up for their clan. Their eyes showed defiance and determination not to give in to the pressure of their opponents. Then the girl angrily turned around to them and asked how they could claim to remember nothing when they had previously said something completely different. At this point, Zhang intervened and said that it seemed like something was starting to surface in his memory. What he said shocked the girl herself. This man claimed that it was she, Techui, who had beaten them all up and then accused him in order to clear herself of suspicion. This unexpected lie pierced her heart, making her tremble with indignation and incomprehension. It's an obvious slander. Some men from the Black Dagger clan came out in support of the guy and said that they too remembered the same thing. They were witnesses and knew that the accusation was nothing but pure fiction. The solidarity and support from the clan brought some relief to the girl's heart. Lu Xiaonan, who had clashed with the Empress, could not finish her sentence. The Empress interrupted her, emphasizing her power and saying that whoever invaded the clan deserved the punishment of death. These words were spoken with a ferocity that showed the ruthlessness and. When everything around calmed down, the guy was about to return to the gate to leave the place. However, the girl stopped him and decided to see if he had any power. She wanted to know if he had some inner strength that could validate his words and actions. After careful consideration and analysis, she came to her final conclusion. Zhang really did not possess any strength. He possessed neither refined practice nor fortitude. This statement shocked Tetchui. She could not believe that the guy was so helpless and devoid of inner strength. Lu Xiaonan approached Tetchui with insistence in her voice and asked her if she had witnessed someone enter through the gate and beat everyone up in one fell swoop. She was looking for confirmation of her suspicions and hoped that Tetchui would be able to reveal the truth. However, Tetchui again insisted that Zhang Lang was the culprit of the incident. Suddenly, full of rage, Tetchui pounced on the guy, announcing that she would beat him until he told the whole truth. She began choking him, trying to extract the answer from him by violent means. A guy in severe physical and emotional agony felt an inner sense of power returning to him. A divine majesty awakened in his body and he began to gradually feel a rising energy. His divine body was slowly charged with power, starting at 30%, then 70%. He could no longer hold back and began to manifest the power that had always been in him but had long remained at rest. However, at the most decisive moment the Empress intervened, interrupting the tense situation. She declared that the unfolding events would be discussed later and ordered everyone to stop their actions. Her voice sounded imperious and all present were forced to stop, obeying her will. Tetchui, obeying the Empress' command, slowly backed away from the lad, ceasing to strangle him. The lad, freed from her deadly grip, began to greedily inhale the air, trying to regain his breath after the agonizing attack. His eyes were filled with mixed emotions of relief and amazement that events had taken such an unexpected turn. Suddenly he found himself in the deity's consciousness, where a light silhouette reappeared in front of him, who gave the second and third tasks. The items were the same as in the pen, but the time was 72 hours, that is, 3 days. In the second task, the contents of the task stated that one had to get to the peak of Wanman Mountain to complete the login, and in the third task, one had to make a woman wear the specified item. He felt perplexed, not realizing what the object was indicated. Was it a bracelet or a necklace? He gazed at the object, trying to unravel its essence and meaning. 22. Meanwhile, a mysterious silhouette held out to the guy a shawl or perhaps something similar, made in coffee colors. The shawl lay on his arms or rested on his shoulders, creating an atmosphere of intrigue and mystery. In the Empress Palace bedchamber, Lu Xiaonan massaged her mistress' temples, starting a conversation about the implausibility of Tetchui's claims and the fact that there was something wrong with Zhang Lan. She wondered why the Empress was so insistent on keeping him in the palace instead of banishing him. However, the Empress was in no hurry to continue her conversation with Xiaonan and ordered her to leave as she herself wanted to rest. The Empress needed privacy to ponder and make important decisions. The girl realized that the power of the Jade Clan was beginning to weaken. Although the clan still ranked among the most influential and powerful clans, more and more clans were directing their predatory gazes at it, wanting to strengthen their position. On the day of worship, Tetchui prayed to the ancestral spirits, asking them to guide the disciples along the path of strength, for they were so infirm. Suddenly, a guy flew from the sky and, incredibly, fell directly onto the statue, attracting everyone's attention and causing shock to those present. She understood that his appearance was definitely given to them by the spirits of the ancestors, and by the way this man has a special strength and body, it was also clear to her that he had never perfected himself, but she was interested in the question, what practices did he use? In the Guardian's room, The guy lay there and pondered how the system can do such a terrible and shameful task, and even if the girls here don't understand anything about this era, but after all, you can see that this is complete bullying. Tetsuya was standing outside the front door watching the guy who was busy thinking hard about how to complete the task, but suddenly the girl kicked a hole in the door and shouted that he was finally caught. She vehemently asked the guy what he had just held in his hands, demanding an answer. The guy, a little embarrassed, replied that he had not held anything. His answer evoked mixed feelings in her, ranging from disbelief and annoyance to some puzzlement. Tetsuya suddenly lashed out at Zhonglan, pouring out her rage and accusations. She claimed that she had been watching him through the door crack for a long time, but Zhonglan tried to calm her down, saying that he himself was hurt by what was happening. Forcefully squeezing Zhonglan's hands, Tetsuya repeated her previous question about what he was holding in his hands. Finally, Zhonglan replied, saying that it was just a bandage. He tried to explain that it was an ordinary object without much meaning. The guy's body was accumulating as much as 85% strength, but he decided to react quickly to the situation and handed her the bandage. However, Tetsuya noticed that the bandage looked strange and was too elastic, making her suspicious. The forces in his divine body continued to build up, and he needed to find a place to let off steam, otherwise, the events of that day could happen again, leading to new unexpected consequences. The green-haired girl claimed that the object was extremely suspicious and decided to take it away, hiding the black stockings in her pocket. The guy appeared confused and bewildered before this turn of events. She pinned the guy against the wall and claimed that he was skillfully pretending and humiliating her in front of the Empress. However, he continued to deny it, claiming that he did not know what she was talking about. The girl abruptly grabbed the guy and stuffed him into a bag. Literally, she ran out of the room, declaring that she would not allow anyone to live if he offended her and Zhao Tetsuya. His mouth was taped shut, and he frightfully hoped that this crazy girl wasn't going to take him to a secluded place and try to kill him. Suddenly it was announced to him that he had just completed the second task, which left the guy confused and scared. As a reward, he was given the ability of complete invisibility for a full 3 minutes. If everything is understood correctly, it comes out that the guy is now going to Wanman, the mountain tops, since that is the essence of the mission. Tetsuya untied the sack and told the lad to come out and look at the place that would become his grave. Her words were full of warning and were alarming, making the lad feel his life was threatened. Here already the lad was standing and digging a hole, with a plank he did not understand from whence he had gotten it, for himself, of course, and asking Sister Tetsuya why she was taking everything so seriously, but he did not know whether to converse with her, for the charging was not yet complete. He was digging the hole warily, feeling some vague threat, and could not restrain his curiosity as to his sister's seriousness. She, sitting on a rock and folding her legs and arms, began to say that she always clearly distinguishes good from evil, meaning that now he was digging his own hole, and that he had only 2 choices, to shatter or just bury himself in that hole. Her voice sounded calm, but the words were heartfelt, reminding the guy of the consequences of his actions and the choices he had to make. But suddenly the girl said that there was a third option, and it required him to show his strength and hit her with maximum force to make sure of her invincibility and determination. Her suggestion was unexpected, and the guy felt an inner hesitation. He looked at the girl with a kind of bewilderment and doubt, trying to understand what was behind her words and what this test could give him. After hearing this, the boy asked her to turn her back to him, but she flatly replied, saying that she had pulled such a trick when she was only 6 years old, and that he had no chance of fooling her with his blow. Her confidence caused him mixed feelings, including some disappointment and confusion. He realized that this girl knew her business and that his attempt to deceive her would not go unnoticed. But it turns out the guy didn't mean to deceive her, but quite the contrary, to warn her of the danger that awaited them from behind from people unknown to him who may have intended to do them harm. He expressed his sincere concern and desire to protect her, but his words got mixed up in the confusion and misunderstanding that arose between them. They stood there, gazes clashed, and both realized that they urgently needed to find common ground and overcome their differences. Those warriors whose intentions were sinister began to launch attacks towards Zhao Tetsuya with their sharp spears. but she fought back with consummate skill and claimed that they had mistaken their aim by underestimating her strength and determination. The girl, holding on to her wounded arm, said that those who would throw arrows at her from the back would be immediately handed over to the Empress, so that she would mete out her severe punishment to those who dared such a treacherous attack. The arrows turned out to be not only deadly but also poisonous, and the guy was horrified to see Techui begin to feel very sick, realizing that time was working against them and that every minute was becoming more critical. Suddenly the head of the hostile clan with 2 bodyguards behind him appeared and said that he wanted to pass unnoticed, but he saw this Empress wench and couldn't pass just like that, but first he would kill the guy and avenge his dead sons. Zhao wasn't particularly surprised by the appearance of the ringleader, who was clearly aiming for something other than just stealing. At the same time, the poison that had entered her body was starting to slowly spread throughout her body, causing increasingly strong negative effects. One of the ringleaders of the enforcers, perplexed, asked the leader what should be done with the useless guard. Without hesitation, the ringleader gave the order to kill him simply, considering him an unnecessary nuisance. The guy, frightened and not fully understanding what was going on, began to make excuses, stating that he was just an ordinary lumberjack and had no idea who the girl was or why they were involved in this situation. Completely unexpectedly for the guy, the girl who had previously seemed like a stranger suddenly stood up for him, claiming that she was their rival and not the man in question, who was clearly an accidental victim of circumstance. She turned to Jan Lan, saying that these were their sworn enemies, that for hundreds and thousands of years they had been locked away, and now they were making their way to them with some plan. She also told him to go back and report everything to the Empress while she would apprehend them. Observing what was happening, the ringleader scathingly stated that if the guy relied on the girl, he himself would be the first to kill her, with the aim of breaking his spirit. His face sparkled with anger and his words sounded like a threat aimed at the guy and his ability to rely on support and protection. He wanted to undermine his composure and determination by exploiting the vulnerability of his weakness. However, suddenly a bright yellow light appeared all around, accompanied by an incredible power that even the ringleader did not expect to see. Finding himself in utter bewilderment and amazement, everything around was illuminated with a bright glow, and the energy permeating the air was so strong that it sent shivers inside everyone present. The ringleader felt his power and confidence begin to waver in the face of this inexplicable phenomenon, and his face expressed a mixed feeling of amazement and fear. Guy, realizing his true divine body essence, boldly stood in front of Zhao Techui, covering her with his own being. He addressed their enemy, saying that was all he could say at the moment, and then added that he couldn't just leave her here alone and run away as it was against his nature and human duty. The power in his divine body decreased by only 5% and became equal to 80% of the enemy's strike power. This surprised the guy as he had expected a much greater effect and wondered why the difference was so insignificant. The leader of the hostile clan was bothered by all this and didn't like it. He gave the order to finally kill the guy, considering him a threat. Lon turned to them with a mocking tone, telling them to finally accomplish their task or still fear the usual gate guard. These words were laced with a mocking ironic attitude towards their failures. The guy, charged with power and in complete control, called the warriors to himself, drawing them to his side and instantly scattering them. A strange and unfamiliar feeling arose inside Zhao Techui that she hadn't expected. It was something like a pleasant excitement or joy, but she couldn't quite understand what it meant or where it came from. John Lan continued to taunt their enemies, offering the ringleader one last opportunity to escape. This caused even more irritation and anger to the ringleader, who felt his power and authority was being jeopardized. Thoth stood proudly erect, spreading his arms apart, and with a sneer on his face ordered the lad to attack him with all his strongest techniques, assuring him that on no account would he allow himself to retreat or deviate from a direct confrontation. Zhao Techui looked at the boy with a kind of delight in her eyes, feeling ancient legends and lore awaken and come alive in his presence. She pondered thoughtfully, recalling the stories and warnings she had once been entrusted. The villain, though not without hesitation, agreed to fulfill his demand, sensing that this fight would be unpredictable and dangerous. He gathered his dark energy within himself, aiming to amass power for a special and devastating reception. Guy weighed the risks and decided not to waste his power in vain. He decided to use only 30% of his full power to ensure that he was well protected from the possible consequences of a collision. The villain, focused and filled with grim energy, released streams of lightning bolts aimed directly at Jan Lan. He hoped that his devastating attack would completely destroy his rival and show him his undeniable power. Jade Clan watched anxiously, feeling her heart clench with worry for her boyfriend. Suddenly, she realized that she trusted him, and his fate had become truly dear to her. Her eyes reflected excitement and growing affection, even though she did not understand where it came from and why he was causing such strong emotions. He easily repelled the enemy's attack, and he wasn't even hit with an edge because he was impenetrable, and he spent too much power on his attacks. Without hesitation he deliberately asked the head if this was his strongest technique. The shock seized the ringleader. He simply could not believe his eyes. This blow did not hurt him in any way. At the same time, a curiosity arose. Where did this mysterious guy come from? Jan Lan was not that naive. Pretending and incorporating his acting skills, he strategically pushed off the ground to seemingly fly backwards. It was part of his plan to create the illusion of a strong punch. Continuing to pretend as if he was in pain, the guy claimed that it was a sly and cunning trick that made him pretend to miss. At the same time, Jade Clan panicked and fearfully asked what happened to him. Taking advantage of the situation, the guy abruptly grabbed the girl's hand and jumped down, wondering if perhaps his strength would increase with time. At this time, the ringleader gave orders to his warriors to pursue them and catch them. The warriors persevered in their search, realizing that escape would be difficult given their injuries. They were determined in their quest to locate the pair. The boys found shelter in a narrow crevice of a certain cave. Jan Lan sighed and admitted that his strength was almost completely exhausted. Then Jade Clan, inquiring about the next steps, said, "What should we do now?" Suddenly the guy pronounced that there was one way to get her powers back and asked if the girl was carrying the stockings that she had taken from his room. She surprisingly replied that she did have those stockings. Jade Clan asked what should be done with these stockings. Is it possible to use them as a dressing for his wound? However, the guy shook his head negatively, refusing the idea. The guy explained that she should put these stockings on herself, causing Jade Clan to be perplexed. She could not understand how the socks could help restore her strength, but was willing to try, for she had confidence in him. A girl sits on one of the rocks in a cave and starts to put on these stockings, questioningly asking if they will actually help her. The guy, wasting no time, replies that they can't waste any time and must get into action. The guy turned away and looked toward the exit of the cave, declaring that he probably still had plenty of time and could afford to joke that the fate of all mankind lay in the hands of a girl. As Jade Clan continues to put on these stockings, she thinks about the material they are made of. They are so silky and soft. In addition, she feels an inexplicable feeling of shame that comes and goes, engulfing her as she continues to put on the stockings. However, she gathers her will in her fist and overcomes herself, mentally telling herself that she just has to put them on and deal with it. The stockings turn out to be very narrow, lightweight and tight around the girls, but, although the feeling may be unusual and a bit uncomfortable, Jade Clan feels intense pleasure from this pleasant sensation they give her. The guy rejoiced, for the task was completed and he received rewards. The first was a capsule of charm, after taking which the attractiveness of a particular person will increase by 300%, but the time of action is only 1 hour, and the second reward is an amulet of evasion. After wearing it, you can get 100% effective evasion from any attack for 20 minutes. Jan Lan turned to praise Clan for her skill in adjusting her stockings, but when he saw her do it, his eyes almost fell out of his orbits. He was shocked and amazed at her extraordinary grace and elegance. As a result of this impression, his divine body began to charge with energy up to a marginal 105%. This was incredibly dangerous, and the guy realized that he needed to get out of here immediately to avoid potential disaster. He became unbearably hot and his body seemed ready to explode from the buildup of energy. He felt that time was flowing away and he must use his power wisely. Without a second thought, he decided to run with all possible speed to get away from danger and protect Techui. Zhao Techui looked confusedly at the trail of the fleeing guy. She could not believe how he was able to summon such power and strength. In her eyes, he became even more attractive and mysterious. She realized that in front of her was a real hero with a noble heart. As the lad fled, he was pursued by the very warriors who had previously sought them out. They saw him leaving and realized that they could not let him get away. They quickened their steps, aiming at his capture and betrayal. However, the guy wasn't about to be confused. At just the right moment his superpower returned to him, filling him once again with power and energy. He felt his body come alive and filled with determination. Now he was ready to fight his pursuers and protect Techui. The ringleader watched intently from a distance. When he saw such incredible power that the guy had gained, the thought crossed his mind that the Empress herself or even something even higher might be in front of him. One of the warriors turned to the ringleader with a question in his eyes and asked what they should do. The ringleader, sensing the dark energy that began to pulse around the guy, replied with a chuckle that it was time to give in to the evil spirits and destroy them forever. All the warriors unanimously seconded the motion and went with perseverance into that fatal battle, while the ringleader, thrashing about with inward reflections on the senselessness of death, resolutely resolved to make his escape and save his own life by slipping between the lines. With a powerful swing, Jianlan delivered devastating blows, stripping each enemy of his powerful strength, and yet he wasn't even going to blink, not even giving the very thought of surrendering the slightest chance to enter his mind. However, suddenly Zhao Techui stood in the way of the lad and, stopping his deeds, appealed to him not to destroy all the opponents, but rather to leave at least one witness who could tell what had happened. Turning to the ringleader whom he had groped, he inquired whether the latter was still breathing, to which the ringleader, faintly giving signs of life, could give no answer, but nevertheless showed signs of existence. Grasping him stiffly by the strands of his hair, he asked in a harsh tone the reasons for the true intent of their presence in this place, to which the warrior was already preparing to answer, but felt hesitation and uncertainty within him, preventing him from formulating a precise answer. They tied him up and started asking him questions about the third and fourth sisters guarding Linfong Gorge, how they got in and if there was anyone else besides them, and how many clans were there, but he wasn't going to answer and only said that he'd rather be killed. He emphatically stated that no matter how many times they tortured him, nothing could stop the rebirth of his mighty clan, and even in the event of his death, other martial clans would inevitably come to their aid and justice. After shouting the phrase, "Long live evil," the ringleader began to rise into the air with majesty, surrounded by a mystical purple glow that permeated every corner of the surrounding space. Realizing that this was an act of self-destruction, Jianlan quickly grabbed the girl in his arms despite the danger and dashed away from the place. For only seconds later, a deafening explosion followed, leaving only destruction and chaos behind. On stopping, the girl carefully noticed that his intention was indeed to self-destruct, but the fellow was too busy with other problems, for he had discovered an irreparable hole in his fast boots, which prevented him from turning to such radical thoughts. When those arrived home in the middle of midnight, Techui asked the guy to keep secret everything that happened today in that place, but the guy tried to somehow still ask about that clan, but she shut Lana up. He said she only needed him because she had poison in her system, but angrily denied that she could handle herself and that she would only need 1 hour. When the guy was left alone, he was consumed by thoughts that the girl was too stubborn and he wondered if she could beat him. And also he was interested in the stockings, namely why she took them. Were they really so ugly, or is it because girls cannot give them up? His mind was spinning with thoughts of the mysterious clans, which he realized that Zhao Techui deliberately avoided revealing too many details. Furthermore, he was worried about the lack of clarity of the entry system, which appeared to be completely incomprehensible to him. Suddenly, the image of the Empress floated into the guy's mind, and he thought that maybe the system was giving him a clue about what he needed to do and where to direct his attention. He needed to get information about the other clans that only existed in this world, so he asked Zhao Techui for help so that she could tell him where to look for the information he needed. And so she began her story that the other clans are non-human races that exist only in this world. They may be called demons. 3,420 years ago, a protracted war broke out between the Magnielans of other planets. In the end it happened that the human race paid a heavy price, but displaced these alien clans and locked them up in 10 different restricted zones, guarded by 4 Shenxiang clans and 6 Huazhou clans. Some time passed and their powers began to revive. So they tried to attack to return to their worlds, and today they encountered an alien race that had sneaked in. The boy was surprised, for 10 forbidden zones is quite a lot, and he also asked a very interesting question about his power, exactly what level is equivalent to 100% charge of his divine body. To which the silhouette of the Empress replied that the levels go from top to bottom, starting from the spirit, and then the initial, the impenetrable heart, the tempered character, the ringleader, the emperor, the deity, the lord, the immortal, and there are 9 in total. The capacity of the divine body is 1,300 units, and the 100% strength charge is the ringleader. The guy glittering eyes looked at all this, being shocked by the fact that it is possible to increase his capacity, and asked how it is done, to which he received the answer that every time he performs a task, he receives points, then these points can be exchanged for items or capacity. For every 10 units of capacity requires 100 points, but unfortunately, Zhonglan currently has only 13 points. Enough only for the books. He looked displeased and said that he needed an object that would make him stronger. His eyes expressed disappointment and impatience, for he aspired to greater achievements and strength. He wondered what object could help him in his endeavor to become stronger and succeed in his efforts. But just a few seconds later he changed his mind, for a thought occurred to him, and he asked again, could his points be exchanged for any book? The thought came suddenly, and the boy felt excited, hoping for a positive answer. He imagined the endless possibilities that the book provided, and was eager to expand his knowledge and skills. With the door ajar, the boy watched the people of the Xianjian clan. His eyes were full of curiosity, for he didn't understand why they were all sneaking around at night. He wondered what was the purpose of their actions and what secrets they kept. He felt the excitement and desire to learn more about the mysterious actions of this clan. He had been notified and told that right now he would be receiving his 4th assignment, but the boy wondered at what level of Empress. His thoughts were confused as to the difficulty of the assignment. He knew that the Empress level usually involved serious trials and challenges. He was assessing his strength and readiness for such a challenge. After all, the outcome could affect his future abilities and progression in rank. Zhang Lang, inwardly pondering and turning his mind to Zhao Techui, came to a conclusion about the weakness of the defense and what actions he should take in this situation. His mind was working at full speed, analyzing the problem and looking for solutions. He was aware that he was responsible for the safety and success of his team, so his thoughts were focused on developing a strategy that would allow them to win. At this time, the girl, smugly enjoying her reflection, admired her inimitable beauty and talked about how beautiful she was inside and out. She was immersed in the world of her own charm and was proud of her uniqueness. Her confidence and ego were evident, and she willingly shared her thoughts of her own superiority with everyone around her. The girls who were in the square in front of the Empress' luxurious residence were attacked by the very guys from the foreign clan, harming them and disturbing the peace and safety of the place. Noisy cries for help filled the air, and the girls' faces reflected terror and helplessness. The ensuing panic led to chaos, and each of them tried to escape the violence while hoping for help and protection. At the same time, the lad knocked the guards guarding the Empress's residence off their feet, realizing that his goal must be to infiltrate the Empress's palace itself to accomplish his mission. He was determined and desperate in his quest to achieve his goal despite the obstacles in his way. With his swift movements and unmatched agility, he tried to overcome all obstacles to reach his goal and complete his assigned task. As a guard, his job was to immediately report to the Empress as soon as someone attacked, and only when he reported could he hope to make direct contact with Her Majesty. On entering the bedchamber, he found that there was a dead silence, which alarmed him, and made him think that these traitors had penetrated here before his arrival. His heart beat faster, and his thoughts foundered in a tangled web of suspicion. He surveyed the room, and every quiet sound pierced his hearing, ready at any moment to react to the treacherous movements of his enemies. But it turned out quite different. The Empress was sleeping peacefully on her bed, serene and carefree, unaware of the approaching danger. Her face expressed calmness, and her breathing was even and deep. Guy was relieved to realize that the Empress was safe for now, and immediately remembered his mission and the need to protect her. He approached her and sounded her name, but she looked so thin and weakened that a conjecture arose in his mind, that perhaps she had been poisoned or exposed to evil charms. His eyes pierced with discernment, and he looked at the Empress with alarm and concern. He realized that her safety and life were threatened and resolutely set about seeking answers, trying to discover the source of her condition and find a way to help her. Suddenly, poisoned arrows flew towards him, but he was able to deftly deflect them and noticed that they did not belong to the Xianjian clan, but to a powerful alien clan whose representatives were hostile to the Empress and her defenders. The Empress slightly opened her eyes, but everything was very cloudy. She could clearly hear Zhang Lan's voice and how angry he was at the alien clan that dared to attack the Jade Clan Empress herself. He pondered that if the attackers were from the Xianjian clan, they might not have sought to kill them. After all, clans could have complicated relationships, but since the attackers were from another world, he supposed that they might not be too offended by him and the Empress. Suddenly the Empress herself embraced him from behind, and she asked him to hold her tighter, which caused him to be bewildered and fear for her welfare. Guy couldn't understand what was going on with the Empress and why her body was so hot, because she looked unusually weak and fragile. The attacking guys made the decision to continue their assault, seeing that they were in such a vulnerable position, as the Empress was unconscious and they were just the two of them, deprived of help and protection. He was announced that he had completed the 4th task and was being rewarded with a mysterious gift purse. Offer to look at it right now, but the guy didn't care about that, for he was with the Empress in his arms, dodging those guys' attacks. Lu Xiaonan turned to one of the girls and asked what the strange sounds were, who replied that the Empress' bedchamber had been attacked. The girl was permeated with anger and irritation, as this was not the first time the bedchamber had been targeted, despite the fact that she considered it her personal sanctuary and not a place of commerce like a vegetable market. She was shocked that strangers had sneaked into their clan and some high-level ones in purple robes. She knew that being in the purple robe was tantamount to the level of a lord, but if the Empress was completely healthy, it wouldn't be extremely difficult for her to deal with them, but she had suspicions that there was something wrong with the Empress. It was the alien overlord specifically in the purple robe who had picked up on the fact that it was strange, namely that there was a man in the Jade Clan and he had almost interfered with their affairs. The guy grinned and replied that not just a little, but would completely thwart their plan, but mentally he knew that that man was strong and not worth fighting him, but here was the only problem was that the Empress was under the power of the charms. At first, he was completely confused as to what this mysterious spell that had been cast on the Empress was, but the very moment he finally realized the meaning of this spell, he instantly took action. As usual, it was at the critical moment that a system appeared offering a solution to the problem. It was like a long-awaited lifeline that suddenly appeared before him. But here's the problem, she always gave him something incomprehensible. While he expected support and help, she provided something unexpected and often useless. Sometimes it was boots that fell apart after the first run, and sometimes it was a scroll that she claimed was supposed to make his clothes invisible, but only turned them transparent. This guy's hands absolutely refused to obey him. He was desperately discouraged and decided to appeal to the system to find out how she was acquiring all this stuff from the markets for a ridiculous 2 yuan. In response to his displeasure, she flared up and urged him to show respect. She demanded recognition of her importance and significance, which he clearly ignored. Zhang Lang resolutely stated that if she wanted to help, then let her open that mysterious gift. He was even willing to go on his knees to beg her to do so, but in response, she only waved it away, claiming that it was completely useless. Resenting the overlord, Zhang Lang began to gather his strength, preparing for a confrontation, and bitterly noticed that the latter would not even let him open his own gift. In rage, he pounced on the enemy, but his divine body was gradually depleted and his charge dropped to 50%, limiting his abilities. The villain steadfastly stated that all actions before death were futile, trying to undermine Zhang Lan's morale and strength. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, the system threw a clue and offered to immediately open the mysterious gift. Without thinking, the guy agreed to the idea, determined to overcome all obstacles. The Lord was deeply shocked that his mighty power had simply been taken and absorbed, and this caused him to feel an unquenchable rage and resentment. He felt a bright flame of anger flare up in his chest, and his eyes shone with determination to regain his lost power and take revenge on those who dared to disregard his greatness. The system congratulated the guy that from the gift he received the ancient magic weapon Guiyun sword. This sword originally belonged to the humanity Emperor Xian Yuan 3,000 years ago. It can also absorb the aura of heaven and earth, crushing demons. The Lord began to say that he had read about such a sword in ancient books and he could not believe that the sword of Guiyun had appeared in this world, and he was even more surprised that this sword had appeared in the hands of such a worthless man. Lana simply exploded with uncontrollable anger when he was contemptuously called worthless, and stated with complete sincerity that not only did he not deserve such an insult, but was completely worthy of respect. With unleashed fury and determination, the boy took his new weapon in hand and with a loud, piercing shout, proclaimed himself the indomitable defender of the Jade Clan, ready to defend its honor and dignity to his last breath. Falling into mockery and irony, he commented on the situation, emphasizing the ridiculousness of the fact that someone with his own cultivation base decides to harm him. It seemed that he couldn't have imagined a more ridiculous performance. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, Xiaonan appeared. Her presence was felt immediately, and she ordered one of the girls present with an imperious gesture to immediately find the master. Her commanding voice penetrated every corner of the room, making everyone at once quiet and obey. However, at that very second her gaze stopped on the presence of the Empress, and Xiaonan called out to her with genuine enthusiasm, as if saluting the might and superiority of her rule. Xiaonan's voice sounded loud and clear, filling the space of the hall with admiration and reverence. Thoughtlessly rushing to her, she began to express her deep concern for her safety, but at the same time expressed her joy that she was all right. She also ordered the destruction of all remnants of the alien race. The Empress finally spoke the words, admitting that she was not clear on what exactly had happened as she had been on the verge of madness during the training session. And asked about the state of the palace, her voice sounded with mixed feelings of concern and bewilderment, and she sought to make sense of what had happened and get information on the current state of affairs in her palace. Her gaze was directed towards her loyal advisors, hoping that they would be able to tell her what had happened. Turning once again to the pink-haired girl, the Empress asked impatiently if she did not know who exactly defeated the alien race, demanding an answer to this important question. Her voice sounded with a note of irritation, and her gaze was directed at the pink-haired girl, waiting for a sincere answer that would help her to solve the mystery of this significant victory and determine her further actions. Then, with some difficulty, she was able to recover in her mind the blurred image of the man who had desperately saved her from the fatal blow. Her face expressed gratitude and wonder at this hero whose appearance had brought clarity to the chaos of her mind. She concentrated on recalling the details of the rescue and tried to call to mind the name and origin of this mysterious rescuer in order to convey to him her gratitude and the possibility of providing him with further instructions. In the depths of her thoughts, she speculated that perhaps it was Zhang Lan who manifested as a hero at that fateful moment. At that time, the guy complained of pain in his lower back, feeling the immense power of the sword that seemed too overwhelming, and he had the feeling that his body was completely exhausted. The next day Lu Xiaonan reported to the Empress that the alien captives explained that she had been rescued by a mysterious captain named Zhang, and in his hands was a magic weapon, the Guiyun sword, which had been missing for thousands of years. The Empress could only speculate that perhaps this was a descendant of the Xianyuan clan. But the Empress denied, saying that if it was really a Xianyuan clan man, why did he appear here and why didn't he say goodbye? But then the assistant suggested that perhaps it was the same Zhang Lang and should she take him to the prisoners? But the Empress negatively said that if one didn't want to reveal himself, then let him not do so. but she was more concerned that an alien like the high priest in the purple robe could bypass the defense line of the Forbidden Land and infiltrate the sect. Shaoning said that the disciples of the Xianjian clan, whom they had chased away after they had invaded the mountain gate a few days ago, had come to deliver a message, and the alien races guarded by the other clans had also suffered a change, and Ta feared that they might be planning something big and grandiose. The Empress found it interesting that they hadn't been disturbed for several years, yet they dared to come to the mountain gate of her Jade Clan and stage a complete madness. She added to give orders that she would personally go to Linfong Gorge tomorrow. The girl said that it was time for all these alien races to finally experience the power of the Jade Clan and the goddess. Accordingly nodding, she confirmed that she and Tetchui planned to recruit 30 experienced assistants who would inherently accompany them in all their actions. However, the girl insisted that only she and Tetchui alone should go with her, and there was no need for so many people. Furthermore, she asked to bring Zhang Lan to her. Here at last the majestic Empress arrived at Linfong Gorge, and all those present there could not hide their admiration as they greeted the great master. Turning to the third disciple named Ichi and the fourth disciple Qingling, she told them to find the skillfully hidden loophole that led to the secret place. The young man, or to be more precise, the young girl, without losing her cool, assured everyone present that she was fine and only a little dizzy from the journey. The disciples that are there don't know yet that a man has joined the clan of the Jade Goddess, but the master has asked to accompany you, and in order not to scare the disciples, she will allow him to be in women's clothes. The spell that changes the voice is limited in time, and the main thing is that let him not make noise and trouble. The boy, completely dumbfounded by what was happening, could not clearly realize what was going on and wondered to himself why the great master had brought them here. Had she found out about his unauthorized entry into her bedroom at night? One of the inquisitive students, having an irresistible thirst to know, approached Lu Xiaonan with a question about the also unfamiliar girl. In response, Xiaonan revealed the cards and said that the new student was a new student who had come here to gain experience. The Empress summoned the girl to her quarters in a soft voice, leaving Lan alone with the incredulously wary student who was scrutinizing him intently. In Lan's mind there was a ruthless anger at whoever had left him in such an awkward situation, as he was sure his betrayal would be exposed. However, suddenly, Qingling expressed her joy by greeting Lan and introducing herself. She then asked if this was the first time he was visiting Linfong Gorge, and if so, she would gladly guide him through its entire expanse so that he could see everything with his own eyes. Taking his hand in hers, Qingling enthusiastically began to lead him, introducing each amazing place as if to emphasize that everyone here were exceptionally beautiful sisters united by common goals and spirit. Linfong Gorge is the defense of the Jade Clan from the aliens. To the right and left are thousands of miles of Lunman Mountains, which even an eagle can't cross, and only the middle canyon, which is only 100 meters wide, can be passed through. For thousands of years, the alien race has tried many times to counterattack the Huazhou continent through this place, but all their attempts have failed. Guy asked Sister Sinlin how the power level was distributed within the alien race, to which she said that he had asked the right person, for she was the best at it. The girl began her story by saying that in the alien race the dominant one is the high priest, who is very good at spells, and their ranks are differentiated by their color from the strongest to the weakest: red robes, yellow robes, white robes, blue robes, purple robes. Ordinary priests, there are those who are below the priests, that is ordinary aliens. They are only good at physical skills, but their power is not particularly outstanding, and they are also good at riding beasts in the deserts. Of course there are beasts, they are very powerful and you have to be very careful. Now, at last, the lad finally realized the reason for the significant difference in power between the high priest who had attacked the palace and the priest he had encountered on the mountain. He realized that there was a hierarchy of power and influence among them. The older sister with a majestic smile led him to the huge tent. Arousing his curiosity about the contents, she replied cryptically that there was something inside that should please him. When they crossed the threshold, John Lon opened his eyes to the majestic sight before him, a spacious bathtub. The words of his elder sister invited him to rest and immerse himself in the warm waters of the springs for which Linfong Gorge was so famous. He tried to assure everyone that he wasn't tired and everything was fine so as not to cause concern or suspicion. While the mysterious calls sounded in his head, his older sister looked at him with a slight chuckle and told him it was only a product of his tired imagination. Then she gently pulled him by the arm, guiding him toward the bathtub where he could freshen. Inside himself, the boy began to harbor suspicions that perhaps his older sister was beginning to guess his true identity and penetrating thoughts different from what he imagined.